Hey Joey, I wasn't sure I was gonna make this video. That's the most dramatic thing I could have possibly said. This is my November wrap-up. As you know, personally, my reading in November was concerning. And not in the way that my reading in July was concerning. I was in a massive slump, as I mentioned in the last video, while I delved into madness. I was in a slump from about the 6th. Actually, I could literally tell you. Let's see. I was in a slump from the 9th to, let's say, generously the 24th. Just like the whole middle of the month, couldn't read anything. I'm gonna tell you when I started and finished each of these, which I typically don't do because typically there are like 20 of them. There are 13 of these, which is still so many. But this is the disclaimer. We don't judge people for how many books they read. You could read 3 pages a month. You could read 300 books a year. I literally don't care. When I say, oh, I didn't read that many books this month, I mean in relation to me. I feel like everybody knows that, but all the other booktubers make that distinction, so I feel like I need to make it. So, yes, I read 13, which I read 13 January, February, and March also. So I don't know why this, I guess in November it's because I read 5 in the first 5 days, and then none, and then 7 in the last 2 weeks. So that was just different for me. I typically read about every day, and there was a stint there where I didn't read even a page for 2 weeks, and it was a direct reflection of my mental health. You don't care. And maybe you don't care about this either, but let's get into what I read. So I'm gonna keep my handy spreadsheet here next to me. So I started with Finding Hayes by Laura Pavlov. I read this, I think, 2 days after release. I started it on October 29th. I finished it on November 2nd. I gave it 5 stars. I love this series. This is the Magnolia Falls series. This is book 5. I love it so much. This is following Hayes, the firefighter, who is in the running to become the chief of the fire department, but this guy whose name is literally Lenny, I think, is also in the running, and Lenny has a wife, and Lenny's wife is playing up the politics of the being the police chief thing really well, and Hayes is I don't even know if I want it because I don't want to do all that. And then Savannah, his the love of his childhood life, returns to town for many a reason, and so she's in town, and then she's mostly in town for a funeral of her father/grandfather figure, who has passed away, and he leaves her inheritance on the condition that she gets married within 30 days of his passing. And she's like, dude, I'm not even with anybody. And so they decide to get fake married. And it's delicious because he's in love with her. He's been in love with her the whole time. She's been in love with him the whole time. But there was a miscommunication in their youth that made her think that he hated her and made him think that she just abandoned him. Realistically, we clear up that miscommunication as adults rather quickly. I love that we didn't spend the whole book still being mad at each other about something we did when we were 17. It's so good. They're temporarily married only until they get cleared through the probate court or whatever, but they have to pretend around everyone except their closest friends, literally 2 of their friends who knew. And it's so delicious, and I love this town. I love Magnolia Falls. I want to move there. It's not real. Oh, but I just love it so much. I thought it wasn't recording sound, but it was. Anyway, I love Magnolia Falls. I love every single one of these couples, including the one that I didn't like that much when I read their book. when you order them from her website, you can get them signed. This has nothing to do with the actual contents of the book, but signed. Came with like a bunch of stickers. This is everybody. Oh god. Look at them. Oh, I love them all so much. So, yeah, anyway, I could gush on and on about that for days. And then, immediately following that, this was while I was waiting to go back to the airport for my Arizona trip, I read my Arc of Broken Harbor. I didn't read this physical copy, I read it on my Kindle because I got the e-arc before I got the physical one. If Catherine Cowles has no fans, I'm dead. She has so many fans. Because she's so fantastic and wonderful. But I love everything she's ever written. There are like 2 books in her backlist I haven't read yet because I don't want it to be over. Her new book comes out in January. So, anyway. But this is Broken Harbor. I don't know if that'll be the right way around, but I'm gonna show it to you. So, we've got so many amazing tropes. He plays hockey. He's one of the Coulson crew, which is like the family we're following in this interconnected standalone series. And he like has some trauma because they all have trauma. This is romantic suspense. She's on the run, kind of. I guess, yeah, that's what the trope says. Woman on the run. She's on the run, but she's been kind of settled from the being on the run. But then the being on the run comes back into play. And she's also a single mom. And so, let me tell you their names. Copeland and Sutton. Sutton is a single mom. She's on the run from her child's father, basically. And so she's like real independent, like real closed off. She's like, love being around you guys, but I can't depend on anyone because I need to depend on just me because I'm all my baby's got. You know what I'm saying? And Cope sees that. He literally, first meeting her, calls her warrior because he knows that she's like, because he's been around women who are protecting themselves in various ways because of the trauma they've endured. And he clocks it right away, calls her warrior. He is coaching her son's hockey team. He's like so sweet to Luca. Please tell me his name is Luca. Yeah, okay. I read a lot of single mom books, okay? He's so sweet to Luca. He realizes that she's like taking extra time out of her day to drive Luca to hockey practice, and he's like, I drive right by your house to go to hockey practice. And she's like, well, you can't take him, you don't have a car seat. The next day, I have a car seat. Oh my god. 5 stars. So that's 2 5 stars in a row. 2 of my favorite authors of all time that I'll never shut up about. It was a big month. October, November. And then the reason I was in Arizona in the first place, Lost and Lassoed, listened to this on the plane and before the event where I got to meet Lila Sage and get my book signed. Bueller. Well, first of all, I got this, and then my little signature page. This is following Gus and Teddy. Teddy is Gus's little sister's best friend. So this is best friend's brother. They kind of hate each other because like they just always have kind of like nipped at each other in that kind of way. And, you know, just as you make fun of your best friend's brother, you know. But Teddy finds herself in need of a job. So Gus is a single dad to Riley, the sweetest little girl, and Teddy needs a job, and Gus needs a nanny. And this is not a standard, like, single dad nanny trope, because the first descriptor Gus would use for Teddy is not nanny. And she's not really nannying, she's babysitting. And I don't know how to make that make sense, but like, Riley is 6, she's on summer vacation from school, her dad is a full-time rancher, and so like, her and her basically aunt. Like, I would say that when, like when my best friend has kids, I'm not, like, if I were watching them for an extended period of time, I am not their nanny or their babysitter, I'm like their pseudo aunt. You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense? Anyway, so it doesn't feel the same way. Like, it's not, like, forbidden because she's his employee. Like, yes, he's paying her for what she's doing, and she is watching his kid, but, like, she is not the nanny. This isn't making any sense. Anyway, Teddy is so headstrong and, like, loves fashion, and I love that about her. I love everything about her, in fact. She has a really, really strong relationship with her dad. Instant tears. As my father's daughter really, really hit me in the gut. Because so Teddy has a really strong relationship with her dad, and then Riley has a really strong relationship with Gus. And it just, like... So another 5-star right off the bat. So that's 3 in a row. Do we think that's maybe why I was in a slump? It's either that or the depression. Nobody knows. Anyway. The next book I read was The Striker. Sucker's massive. I also read the Kindle version of this. This follows Asher and Scarlett. Asher plays Premier League football. Scarlett is a former ballerina turned injured turned teacher, and she is tasked with doing a cross-training program of her ballet skills with her brother and his rival being Asher, being the MMC of this book. It's like sort of forbidden because her brother is like, do not even look at my sister, but Asher is nothing if not argumentative is not the right word. But he likes to do things he's told not to do, you know? He's just like a man in that way. The middle of this book didn't need to be there. There was a really good chunk, this is gonna sound so stupid, where they were happy for a little too long. And if you read a lot of romance books, you know what I'm talking about. Because even if there's not a third act breakup, there's always a third act conflict. That's how writing works. And so they like struggle through their like sort of attraction to each other. They finally have the like screw it moment. And then they're dating happily. And like they're talking about the fact that they're hiding it from her brother. But they're not actually like telling her brother. And like things are happening that could cause conflict. And so you're just waiting to find out what thing is going to cause the conflict. And then it becomes so clear it happens. And then we resolve it. And then the book is over. So like we spent too long being like, because I spent the whole time that we were like skipping and singing waiting for like the world to crumble. And I just don't like that because it makes me anxious while I'm reading my book. Because if it's like we're happy, or no, we're starting to get together, we get together, we're happy for like max 100 pages, and then we set up the thing happening, the thing happens, we recover from it, we end happy in the epilogue. Like that's like, I need to like clip along, and if we spend too long being like, yay, we're in love, I don't want it. But I did really, all that being said, now that I've complained for 8 minutes, I really did enjoy it. I gave it 4.25 stars. I like Anna Huang books. I just think that we're letting her write for a little bit too long. Oh my god, I literally told you I was going to tell you when I read all of those, and then I literally didn't after the first one. Okay, rewind. I read Broken Harbor all on November 5th. I read Lost and Lassoed from November 5th to November 6th, so I started it, finished it the next day. The Striker I read from November 6th, after I finished Lost and Lassoed, until November 7th. I spent a lot of time on my Kindle that day. Then, I read on my Kindle, after I read The Striker, on November 9th. I read the whole thing on November 9th. I read Sunshine by Michaela Jean Taylor. Admittedly, I don't remember a ton about this. My note in my spreadsheet is, this really surprised me, I liked it a lot. Let me look up the description of it, because I do remember, but I don't. Because after this is about when I fell into my slump. And it wasn't this book's fault. It was just, like, it was me. So, it's set in a fictional small town in East Texas. Oh my god. I read the description and just brought it all back to me. So, she's from this small town. When she's in high school, she falls in love with the quarterback of the football team, who is 2 years older than her. She is a cheerleader. Like, it's like the whole, like, perfect, like, storybook, you know, cheerleader, quarterback sort of deal. And so this book takes place in a then and now timeline. There's the then of her falling in love with quarterback during high school, how that works. She's always dreamed of going to NYU for college. He's gonna go to A&M or UT or something, one of them. And so, like, them working through that, her, like, him graduating 2 years before her, going off to play football at school with his best friend, and, like, all of that kind of thing. Then she finally graduates. She goes to NYU. He's in his senior year of college. And then she gets a phone call, or back in present day, she gets a phone call, she has to return back to town. And she has to, like, deal with this, like, loss that has happened. And so then, like, there's another sort of story happening in the present timeline that I can't tell you about because the description doesn't tell you about it. Joey knows, because I told her all about it while I read it at her house. But if you're not Joey, I don't want to spoil it for you, but it is really good. The then timeline did make me kind of want to crawl out of my skin, because, like, teenage Layla did kind of, like, drive me crazy. But I did really like this book. I gave it 4 stars. And even 4 stars? Oh, I gave it 3.75 stars. Because now me doesn't remember how much the other timeline bothered me. And the thing that was happening in the present timeline felt kind of rushed. But I did really like it. Like, it was almost a 4-star. I rated it 4 stars on Goodreads. But that's because they don't do 0.75 stars, and it wasn't a 3-star. So, yeah, anyway. Then I started listening to, on November 9th, so after I finished Sunshine, I started listening to All the Little Raindrops by Mia Sheridan, which I have now acquired a copy of, but at that time I did not. I had the Kindle copy that came with the audiobook. So I'm sitting in the airport waiting for 7 hours to get on an airplane, listening to my little book. I don't know if you can search up trigger warnings for this book, because they're not listed in the front of it, but oh boy howdy should you. That's what I'm gonna start with. This is about 2 teens who get kidnapped. The story of them escaping the kidnapping. Also what happened while they were kidnapped. And then a 7 years later perspective where they try and figure out who kidnapped them. That's all I'm gonna say, because this book is crazy. And the whole time I was like, what do you mean about all of it? But I started on the 9th, I finished it on the 14th. Because when I returned home from vacation, I didn't read anything for a long time. Part of it was because I was like, I want to finish this, but it's so heavy that I, like, couldn't bring myself to pick it back up, and I should have just started something else. But also I don't think I could have started something else because I do think that I was just in a slump. Could I say slump one more time in this video? I ended up giving it 4 stars because it was kind of convoluted. I then, like, 75% of the way into this book, when I went to put it on my Goodreads, discovered this is sort of book 2. It's not explicitly book 2, but it's like an interconnected standalone series where, like, maybe some more stuff would have, like, clicked or made sense if I had read the other one. But I didn't know that. So, 4 stars for that. I then listened to The Woman in Me, which is Britney Spears' memoir. I got really into memoirs this month because I think I was both trying to escape, like, I was trying too hard to escape reality, that I just needed, like, something, I don't, why am I trying to psychoanalyze why I was listening to audiobooks? Audiobooks? Why I was listening to memoirs. Anyway, I really like memoirs that are read by the person who wrote them. Brittany does not read this memoir, but she does read, like, a foreword in it. It was good. I don't rate memoirs because I don't want to put, like, a number on someone's life. That feels wrong. So I don't rate memoirs, but I did like it. the lady who reads it has a nice voice. I liked like the way that she read it. I read it all on November 18th. Like I just like put my AirPod in at work. I listened to the whole thing when I got home and I wasn't done with it. I kept listening to it. It was good. I think people should read it. She went through a lot. And it's like kind of terrifying that is something that people can do to each other. Anyway, so maybe that didn't help, but I then listened to Bad Mother, which is the book one in the sort of interconnected situation between this and All the Little Raindrops. I also have since acquired a copy of this because I found them both at the Half Price Books, and so I was like, maybe I should read this, and so I did. It also had the Kindle audiobook version thing, which that is such a slay. When I can get a Kindle Unlimited book and it comes with the audiobook so I can decide which way I want to read it when it comes to that time, I love that. I think they should do that for all of them. I understand why they don't though. Anyway, this is about a detective who has to move back to her hometown to be a detective in her hometown because she like does something that is politically controversial in New York where she was working, and so instead of getting like eviscerated by the high political people, she gets moved back to her hometown of Reno, Nevada. But then her first case in Reno is a serial killer case who's focused on her. That's spooky scary. So there's like this like letter aspect, like he's writing letters to the police, but specifically to Sienna, and it brings her like childhood love back into her life because the serial killer knows a bunch of stuff about her, and so he brings the ex-fiance back into the picture, so she has to deal with those feelings, she has to be around him again, all of this stuff. It also is just like very intense and deep, but I liked this one marginally better than the other one. Yeah, I gave this 4.25 stars. I gave the other one 4 stars. I like this kind of, like, I love romantic suspense. Some of those, like, especially in All the Little Raindrops, like, there was, like, a serious trauma connection that sort of felt like it overwrote the, like, any actual connection that could be happening between the two characters, and so it was, like, a suspense romance as opposed to, like, a romantic suspense, you know what I'm saying? Which is great, is fine. I just wasn't prepared for that because I think it's listed on, like, Goodreads as romantic suspense, but I would argue it's a suspense romance. Which is pedantic of me, I know. Anyway, I then read The League of Gentlemanly Witches, which is book 2 in this series. I have book 1 and book 3. So, I don't own that one, but I brought these as props to talk about it. I read this, oh my god, I didn't tell you when I read Bad Mother. I listened to Bad Mother from the 22nd to the 23rd. So if you're keeping track, I listened to Britney Spears' memoir on the 18th. But before that, I hadn't read since the 14th. And then I didn't read again until the 23rd. So like this is the chunk of time where I wasn't really reading. And I kind of forced myself through the end of All the Little Raindrops, so then it's like the 9th is the... You do not care. I'm so sorry. The League of Gentlemanly Witches, it's navy blue. I'll put it here over my face. This was kind of slow. We spent like 100 pages getting into the story where it's this girl who's like been prophesized to be the leader of the witches, but it's medieval England, so they can't outwardly be witches, so they do witch stuff in secret, and the way that the magic in like this whole system works doesn't make sense to me in like a real way. I just am like, oh yeah, sure, me, every time I read one of these, because I've read the first one as well. And so she's like doing magic, but she's also a thief, and then she runs into this pirate, and the pirates also do magic but are not explicitly like they do magic but they are not magical, I think, is the way that I understand it. These books are way too smart for me. Like, India Holton, who's writing these, is like so smart, and I am not. I just don't get it, and that's fine, because I still have a good time. But so she runs into this pirate, and the pirates and the witches don't get along, and the pirates and the Wisteria Society, which is the first one, also don't get along. And this amulet of the, like, first witch is like found, and as part of the prophecy, our girl Charlotte is supposed to get it, and so she and the witches and the Wisteria Society are all like at the British Museum, who has it because of course the British Museum has it because it's an important artifact of not there. Anyway, so they're all at the British Museum trying to break it out. She like runs into this like really handsome pirate. She's like, ugh. And then she runs into it again and she's like, oh my gosh, she's so pretty. And he's like, oh my gosh, she's so pretty, but I don't like witches. And like we have this back and forth. And then the amulet gets stolen, but not by her. And all of that happens within the first like 100 pages, right? And then for 150 pages, we're chasing after the amulet. We're going this place looking for it. We have to stay in an inn and there's 2 beds, but we kind of wish there was only 1 bed, so we've made it 1 bed. That was a funny scene. Like all of this stuff, like we're chasing and we're getting caught by other people and we're like, oh my gosh, we're not supposed to be together. So then like, oh, I'm kidnapping you, whatever. And so like all of this is happening for like 150 pages, but it's just that like over and over again. Like it's like yakety sax playing for 3.5 hours. And then finally like we get to the conclusion of the story and things happen and whatever. And it could have, like I would have rathered it was like 75 pages of yakety sax. So because of that, I rated it just 4 stars. It was good. I liked it. Everyone in medieval England has too many nicknames. They call everybody by a different name all the time. That made me confused. Again, I am just not smart enough for these books, but I have a good time. 4 stars. Great. Did I already tell you when I read that from? I read it from the 14th to the 24th. Then on the 25th, I listened to Warrior Girl Unearthed. Now tell me why this has been sitting on my shelf for a year. This was so good. This is about Perry, who lives on an island as part of the... So she lives on Sugar Island and is part of the Anishinaabe tribe. And she is just kind of like a subpar student. Her sister, she's a twin sister, who is like the smart one, literally. That's what people call her. And so Perry has never been that way. She just doesn't find that she's like passionate about school. She's really passionate about fishing. We love that for her. She is kind of a tomboy where her sister is more of like a girly girl, that kind of thing. But she accidentally crashes her car, and so she gets sort of thrust into this like internship program that like her area does, that her sister was already doing but she wasn't gonna do, and she ends up working with the museum person, and she finds out that the like state school on the mainland from her island has a bunch of cultural artifacts that are like things that should belong to her tribe, that they're like holding up with red tape from them getting released back to the tribe because of like, who knows, like there are many reasons we could guess as to why they're choosing to do that, but they are doing it. And so there are like lots of like cultural artifacts that the tribe wants returned to them that are not being returned to them. And this is something that she is really passionate about. So she's trying to figure out with like the chief and the co-chief and the museum guy and like the elders and like all of this stuff, how to get this stuff returned to them. But in the meantime, several women and girls are going missing, which is like a real life problem. MMIW. And so she's also like A, scared for herself, B, scared for her friends, that they're like going to, like this is going to happen to them, basically. And so she's both trying to figure out how to get those artifacts returned to her tribe, and also like sort of what's going on with the murdered and missing Indigenous women. And it like is so good. It's so good. And I learned so many things that I should know, but don't know, didn't know. And I think everyone should read it. This is the same author who wrote Firekeeper's Daughter, which is about the aunt of this character, and so I'm excited to read that one. But it just happened that I found this from my library that day, and I was like, you know what, I think I should listen to this, and I should, and it's so good. And I gave it 5 stars. And that is the start of the bringing me back to reading situation. Because then, so I read that on November 25th. I then read on the 26th 7% of Ro Devereaux, which was another one where I was like, why didn't I read this sooner? Because the thing is that I don't just buy books willy-nilly. It may seem like that, but I do read the descriptions of the books before I buy them, and then they sound interesting, and then I buy them. And it's literally the job of this little flap to make me interested in the book, but like, I keep reading these books and being like, oh my god, that was so good, and I'm like, yeah girl, that's why you bought it. But anyway, this is about Ro Devereaux, who creates an app that basically imitates the childhood game of MASH, mansion, apartment, shack, house, like that, like predict your future game, but she creates an app that plays MASH for you, but using information you input into the app and behavioral science to like actually predict your future, and it works. And then she gets bought by a company, and they like, because it goes viral because her cousin is an influencer. And she posts about it, and then people are so excited to have their futures predicted, and then she gets picked up by a tech company who like wants to help her run it, and so then they're also doing promo for her. They're doing a promo thing where they're like, well, obviously you need to get your match on MASH, your MASH match, which they say like 50 times throughout this book. Anyway, it ends up being her childhood best friend who she's had a falling out with, and so she has to fake date her childhood best friend who hates her, so she thinks, because of the falling out that they had, but he agrees to do it. And so it's like kind of that story, but then also it's the story about how like power corrupts people, and like that she was just doing this thing. It was part of her like senior class project is the reason she created the app, but then it blew up and it became this whole thing. And so then she's like she doesn't recognize herself in the way that she's acting. We're at a slightly different angle because my battery died. So we've got her plugged in. Anyway, I was talking about 7% of Ro Devereaux. So she feels like she's being taken advantage of by the company who bought her app, and she isn't sure if she like is falling back in love with her childhood best friend or if it's all just fake because of the fake dating thing. And then the app starts to like negatively affect people because it's telling them that they like can't do the things that they've always dreamed about, that kind of thing. And so she has to deal with all of that at like 18. And it was very, very good. The audiobook was really good. I liked the audiobook. I had a good time. I ended up rating it 4.25 stars because that's how I felt about it. I don't know why I was going to try and say anything else about that. And then I finished out the month with 2 more memoirs. So as I previously mentioned, I had a memoir-heavy month. So I listened to Finding Me by Viola Davis, because when I went to find Brittany's memoir, hers was also available from the library, and I like Viola Davis, so I was like, let me listen to her memoir. I know nothing about this woman. I now know significantly more about this woman. I still think she's a great actress. I think it's like, she went through a lot growing up, and yeah, listen to it. It was good. Again, I don't rate memoirs, let me say it for the 15th time. And then, finally, I read Paris, the Paris Hilton memoir. Also, she went through a lot. She talks a little bit too much about meta and AI for my liking, because those things terrify me, specifically the metaverse. And so I just kind of went beep, beep, beep while she talked about that. But, like, she's an advocate for the troubled teen industry because of stuff that she went through when she was a teenager, and I think that that is really important stuff, and funnily enough, not funny, interestingly enough, in a kind of plate of shrimp moment, I guess, I was just reading something else about the troubled teen industry and the way that, like, that is harmful to people. I don't remember in this exact moment in what context I was reading something about that, but it is a problem. And I like that she is advocating for it, because wilderness schools and stuff like that prey on families who are looking for just any chance to like save their kid is predatory and bad. Anyway, another one that was good. I liked all 3 of those memoirs. I liked all of the books that I read this month. I just had a hard time reading anything. I'm currently reading Apprentice of the Villain. Other things I'm hoping to get to this month: Golden Lily, the second Bloodlines book, Map of the Otherlands by Heather Fawcett, Emily Wilde's Map of the Otherlands, Beartown, potentially. I bought The Nightmare Before Christmas, which I think is going to be really cute and fun. Those are just things sort of floating around on my radar that I hope to read in December, but I'm not making a December TBR because I feel like when you're coming out of a slump, it's just a bad idea to put yourself in any boxes. And I don't know what I want to read, so I can't tell you, but those are some things I want to read. Thanks for watching.